According to Paul Feinbaum, the ACC and the Big 12, for that matter, we should include them in this conversation, they should just roll over and die.
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jackson Holzer, the host of Locked On Syracuse, filling in for Alex Dono. He's on vacation. He's exploring the wonderful land of Europe. And so that's why I'm in here, the host of Locked On Syracuse. Of course, we're always joined by Kenton Gibbs, the host of Locked On Wolfpack and former NC State defensive tackle. I'm getting all the nervous jitters out of the way here, even though I've done this with you several times here on this podcast. On today's show, rivalries in college sports, how they are affected with the transfer portal, especially when a player goes from one conference rival to another conference rival. We'll talk about that later on in the show. But first, SEC network analyst, SEC apologist, Paul Feinbaum, he blasts the ACC and the Big 12 again, and we're going to get into it here on today's show. But first, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Kenton, did you see the article from On3 earlier this week?
Yes, sir. I read through the article, and I want to say one thing before we get into the contents of the article. I think that you're selling short what Paul Feinbaum is. He's not just a SEC apologist. He's an SEC propagandist outright.
Right.
You know, he, like many members of ESPN, are that just because that's how and what they have functioned to be. I want to make that very clear before we move any further here, that it is beyond apparent to us that, like, hey, it is beyond apparent to us that there's a very vested interest in protecting and holding the SEC up as, hey, this is our crown jewel.
There definitely is, Kenton, but I will also clarify this, or I do want to say that I want to be realistic here. Like, yeah. I do acknowledge that the SEC in general is a better football conference, and it is the best football conference in America. I think we can all agree on that. But
I think the Big Ten is a better football conference, but I think it's an argument. Better? I think the Big Ten is better, but I think there's an argument. I think there's an argument there. I think there's an argument. You can
make an argument, but I think it's a pretty weak argument. But regardless,
all I'm saying is this. Ever since players been getting paid, a lot of championships have migrated north for some reason. Very interesting to see. But proceed.
I mean, Ohio State and Michigan, right?
Proceed, brother. Proceed. I don't want to, we don't want to get too deep in the weeds of that because we got our conference to talk about.
Yeah, we got to talk about the ACC here. But we say this to say we understand that the SEC and the Big Ten are better football conferences, but just the stuff that is out there about how much more superior they are to everyone else, and all the excuses, and the fact that 6-6 teams could go 9-3 or 10-2 in every other conference, as if like Texas, wasn't in the Big 12 for so many years and didn't do anything for 20 years. That's neither here nor there. But anyways, so SEC network analyst Paul Feinbaum, he was asked on the McElroy and Kubalik show what he would do if he were one of the commissioners of the ACC or the Big 12 in regards to the college football playoff, which I think we all know is at some point in time is going to expand. It's not if, it's when it's expanded from 12 teams to 14 or 16. And we're all having these debates about what the format should be. And without getting into all the quotes of the article here, Paul Feinbaum basically told the ACC and the Big 12 to just agree to whatever the SEC and Big 10 say. So if they say you get one or two qualifiers, that's it. Don't put up a fight, just submit. That's that. He also then went on to say, quote, quite frankly, if they get a couple of automatic qualifiers, that's probably more than they deserve. Kenton, what are your thoughts on what Paul Feinbaum said?
I think that it's, again, the entitlement. It is the entitlement. It is the we deserve just because we deserve. I'm sorry, you have to go out there and prove it. If these are people that are in your category and in your ilk and in your brand, you have to go out there and prove it against them. I have been a big proponent, and people will say, well, Kenton, you apply that logic to the ACC. Why didn't it apply to the Group of Five as well? Anybody who knows me knows since the playoff was invented, I always said it should be 12 teams, and you should have every single conference champion that's rated inside the RPI top 35 to 40 in that situation. And anybody that's outside of that, your conference champion is replaced by an at-large bid. I have always said that because I believe in line it the hell up. I believe in, if you believe that you are that much better than everybody else, go show it. Show everybody how much better you are, and let that be that. But moreover than that, in that article, there was a quote about, it was from Paul Feinbaum saying, it was so frustrating to talk to all of these commissioners and head coaches and pretend like, or I'm sorry, let me not misquote his words here. Let me pull up the article and get the exact wording here. The exact wording was, it is so frustrating to talk to commissioners and coaches and have to make sure that SMU gets an equal opportunity. That was what he called frustrating. Talking to every commissioner and football coach at the best league in the country, and at a high point, try to act like we have to make sure SMU gets an equal opportunity. Well, that's not what this is all about anymore. What God-given right does Bama have to be better than SMU?
I don't know. Other than the fact that they're Alabama.
Well, see, I was told that they had that same right over Vanderbilt. And something weird happened in that small little stadium that was under construction that Vanderbilt had going on there. Something odd happened there. I was told.
Kenton, hold on, wait a minute. So you're telling me that Alabama lost to Vanderbilt?
But that's my point. And that's my point.
Really?
That's my point. Again, all of these 14-point, double-digit favorites in multiple games that they lost. We know. And again, my heart goes out to the poor players from the SEC, because the average college football team only has to play 12 games before the playoff starts. But every team in the SEC has to play 12 games plus a million hypotheticals. So I'm so sorry to those teams. And I appreciate their labor of being undefeated in those hypotheticals. But when you line it up, all of a sudden, funny things start happening. All of a sudden, you look around and say, well, wait a damn minute. This conference and these teams that are supposed to be superior are putting out some pretty bad results. So I'm a big proponent of lining it up. I'm a big proponent of, hey, if you think you're a champ, if you think you're the best, if you think you're tops, go out there and prove it. And if they go out there and prove it, I've got no problem with that. You and I just talked about the fact that we acknowledge the ACC is behind the SEC and the Big Ten. We're not delusional. We're saying line it the hell up. Yes, SMU should get an equal opportunity. Why shouldn't they? Why doesn't the team? It's not just about SMU. Hell, Southern Miss deserves an equal opportunity. You know why? Because they are an FBS program. If they run the table, guess where they should be? In the playoff. And teams should have to see them about that and say, you know what? This team from the Sun Belt, we got to take care of. We got to show them why they are where they are and why we are where we are. And if you lose, you damn lose. But I wholeheartedly despise the thought that a team, multiple teams could run the table and be left out. I wholeheartedly despise that.
Well, Kenton, I think we can keep going with this conversation here because, yeah, the SEC, they definitely like to whine. So coming up, we'll talk more about what we do in an ideal college football playoff format. That's coming up next here on Locked On ACC. The NBA Finals are just about ready to begin, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action, and FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. I'll be honest with you all, my NBA playoff picks have been terrible. Just want to throw that out there. They've been bad, but perhaps I'll finally get something right. I'm picking the Oklahoma City Thunder to dismantle the Indiana Pacers in 5 games. They are heavy favorites over on FanDuel. And hey, if you're new to FanDuel and you want to bet on a favorite, well, it's the perfect time to sign up because if you head to FanDuel.com right now and place your first $5 bet, if it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. This is Locked On ACC. I'm Jackson Holzer, filling in for Alex Dono. I am the host of Locked On Syracuse. Of course, we're always joined by Kenton Gibbs, former NC State defensive tackle, and one of the hosts of Locked On Wolfpack, alongside Grayson Boone, who may also be filling in this week on Locked On ACC. So stay tuned throughout the week. And we can continue this conversation here with Paul Feinbaum blasting the ACC and how if he were one of the commissioners, right, of the ACC or Big 12, he would just basically listen to whatever the SEC or Big 10 say. If they say that the conference should only get 1 or 2 qualifiers, that should be it, and they should have no complaints. Kenton, you kind of alluded to this earlier. When the college football playoff expands, what is your ideal playoff format?
My ideal playoff format, I've talked about it a ton on there, off air, on Twitter, all that good stuff. Everybody gets a shot in terms of, again, any conference champion inside the RPI top 35, you get an auto bid. Anybody, and from there, we take out all the rest and say, all right, those are at large. We figure it out. We let the computers decide or whatever the case may be. But in the computers deciding, we cannot use things like strength of schedule in terms of like the first 4 weeks of the season, because to me, that doesn't really strength of schedule. I mean, what are you basing that off of, right? Like you're saying, oh, this team should be top 10. This team was that last year. Based on strength of schedule, Boston College had a top 10 win last year. You know, that's just what that is. It's not, no. I want to see, what do you actually do? When we know what these teams are to some degree, this is what has happened. This is who has come out in the wash. This is what is shaken out in these games. So that would be my ideal scenario. My most realistic scenario would probably be to spread them across. If you're going to do guarantees, do 2 to 3 per conference with contingencies on it, right? Or 2 to 4 with contingencies in terms of, hey, your teams have to be in such a position in terms of your football power index or RPI, whatever you want to say, in order to get it. Because I'm wholeheartedly against your fourth team will always be better than everybody else's third. That is insane. That is just not. And even if you're saying, well, Ken, most years that will apply. Well, fine. I'm still saying that 1 year deserves the privilege. And if your team is better, then most years, wouldn't they just get in anyway? Wouldn't they just be the proven commodity that gets there anyway? Right now, we're arguing for teams who got blew out by Oklahoma to get in to the playoff. That's what this argument is about.
But Kenton, if Oklahoma was in the Big 12 or the ACC, they'd run all over those teams, right? I mean, surely we don't have all this data, right, from when they were in other conferences, and they definitely won all the national championships, right? They always won their conference.
Of course. Texas has a ton of Big 12 championships in the past decade or so. That's just how good they are. That's just what they're working with. But again, line it up and play it out. I believe in, if everybody gets 2 and then you say, hey, if you have multiple teams inside of a certain ranking, let's say the top 20 or so, they're guaranteed a spot in. But beyond that, I would be okay with, those types of situations happening. But these guaranteed 4 or 5 bids, come on, man. Come on. Knock it off. I'm sorry to tell you all, it should not be that way, that we're looking up and asking ourselves, is there a world where your 4th best team cannot possibly be worse than somebody else's 3rd best? That's just foolishness.
I pretty much agree with everything you said. I would give similar. I would say, obviously, the 4 power conference champions plus a group of 5 get the automatic bid. And that's it. There should be no concessions as to, this conference should get 2, this conference should get 3 before a season. Because, again, you don't know. You think you know, you don't actually know. Like, are you sure? Let's say Clemson is the 3rd best team in the ACC next year. Are you sure that they can't be top 3 in the SEC? Like, are you definitively sure right now on June 3rd, the season doesn't start until August, that if Clemson was in the SEC right now, that they can't be top 3? They can't? It's impossible? That's my point. Because it's possible they did. I think we can all agree Clemson's the favorite out of the ACC, but there are a couple of really good teams. If Carson Beck is healthy for Miami, maybe it's finally their year and they can win the conference. SMU is going to be really good again. Maybe Clemson has a really strong year, but they finished 3rd in the ACC.
Louisville, right there. They have all the
really
makings.
Good too.
Yeah.
Right. So my point is that we should not be giving out automatic qualifiers like they're cotton candy. I wouldn't even give 2 automatic qualifiers to these conferences. That includes the ACC. You can flip it around up to me right now and say, hey, Jackson, you know what? Would you take 4 automatic ACC teams and only 2 for the SEC? I know selfishly that would be great for us, but again, it would still make no sense. It would make absolutely no sense. You can't do that. You can't do it at all. It's almost like in pro sports, and I know they're different, but imagine if you're like, okay, I'm a big hockey fan. Okay? I'm a big hockey fan. Imagine if we're like, hey, so the Atlantic Division in hockey, they've represented the Eastern Conference every year since 2019. So a metropolitan team has not been in the Stanley Cup in the last 6-7 years.
Right.
Because of this fact, you know what we're going to do, Kenton, before the next season? We're going to give 5 automatic playoff spots to the Atlantic Division, and the Metro gets 1.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. You don't know what's going to happen next year. It's the same thing in college football here. You don't know if the 3rd best team in the SEC is going to be better than the 3rd best team in the ACC. So all these automatic qualifiers, you get 1 for winning your conference. That's it.
Yeah.
Because guess what? There could also be scenarios where the SEC is miles better than everyone, and they get 5 teams, that there should be 5 in there, and the ACC gets 1, or they get 2, or the Big Ten has a down year. I don't even know why the SEC would want this.
And if they line it up and they make that happen, if they line it up and they show like, hey, we deserve 5, 6, 7 teams in, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. But I'm not okay with swearing, our best are better than your best and our mid is better than your mid. Georgia was one of the best teams in the SEC last year. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Now,
of course,
Georgia Tech, while having a year that many would say, hey, not necessarily the greatest, you had some injury problems at your most important position. You had a lot going on there. Well, what seemed to happen when those 2 lined it up? Georgia was a big-time favorite. 8 overtimes. Double-digit favorite to 8 overtimes. So, again.
And Georgia, and keep in mind that Georgia had to stage a 4th quarter comeback just to get to overtime.
Exactly. So, again, I'm more than happy. I am more than happy. I'm not even one of those degenerate gamblers that FanDuel just love to see me coming. I'm not one of those guys. But I'll tell you what, whenever you talk about these games in terms of, what people believe or project is going to happen versus what actually happens in terms of ACC and SEC, in terms of, the SEC is just giving this God-given right to be superior to every other conference, I will gladly say, I've got a lot of faith in the ACC here. I've got a lot of faith in the ACC here because propagandists like Paul Feinbaum they're the majority. You and I, we're in the minority here. You and I, we're in the smaller platforms here because we've seen on air, even before Jordan Travis broke his leg a few years ago, they were talking on ESPN about who gets left out in these scenarios. And Florida State was the team that they were discussing getting left out despite being undefeated. And mind you, this is before the injury. So again, the propaganda has to stop at a certain point in time. We have to acknowledge, yes, you talk all this about, these teams get more players drafted. And again, the same Georgia team that had 3 offensive linemen drafted in the top 100, everybody keeps swearing up and down they could not run the ball and they were not good at pass protection. 3 players drafted off of an offensive line that people are saying, hey, they were bad. They were a bad group. So again, line it up. Don't tell me about stars. Don't tell me about drafts. Don't tell me about none of that. I don't care about none of it because How many players will NIU have drafted against that Notre Dame team they played?
Did anyone get drafted from them?
How many players would that Boise State team that beat Oklahoma have drafted against them? How many do they have there?
Genty.
Oh, no, I'm talking about the Ian Johnson years, way back when I believe it was Jerry Zabrowski.
I don't remember Boise State even playing Oklahoma.
But you get my point. At the end of the day, it's always about, the stars and who gets drafted and who looks best on paper and who should win it. Oh, we beat this team by 1,000 until you line it up. In football, the beauty of it is 1-on-1. It's not like basketball. It's not like pro basketball, rather. College basketball has the same thing with March Madness. It's 1-on-1. You get one game to be on your A game, to be on your best stuff, to bring the best that you got. Everybody told me, that Drew Aller kid, he's much better than Riley Leonard. When I said on this show, if it comes down to quarterback play, I got Notre Dame. People told me I was crazy. How'd that game turn out? How did it end? Oh, okay. So,
I thought Penn State was going to win.
Line it up. But at the end of the day, this is why we line it up.
Anyway, it's not like I was.
Yeah, and I agree. But this is why we line it up. Because Drew Aller is a guy that people are saying, he's going to be number one in next year's draft. That's your number one pick there. And he got outplayed by a guy that was a 5th or 6th round pick in Riley Leonard, maybe 4th. I can't remember, but somewhere in that ballpark. So you're, again, line it the hell up. And let's let what happens. And by the way, don't you think it's odd that the Big Ten ain't whining and complaining and belly aching all over the place? We need more. Give us more.
Because I think the Big Ten is just happy that the SEC, for whatever reason, keeps including them. I don't really understand it here. It's like the SEC is almost trying to create this all right, it's the SEC and Big Ten versus the ACC and Big 12. But it's really the Big Ten, they always kind of seem to stay out of the headlines. They're kind of just minding their own business. They're kind of just like, we're going to do what we're doing. We don't really care because the SEC is doing us favors. So, mind you that the Big Ten is really just propped up by a few teams, and then everyone else is pretty much garbage. But that's neither here nor there.
But that's every conference. People don't want to acknowledge it. That's every conference. Every conference you go to, you've got 2, maybe 3 really good teams. 4 teams that people consider contenders. Beyond those top 4, there's you may have a good team or 2 that people convince themselves, when this team's good, they can beat anybody in America. Well, are they good all the time?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, then don't tell me about your 4th best team. Tell me about the team that have consistently done this. Don't tell me about, this team has a great win, because great wins are not the only place that champions are made. Champions are made by consistency, by doing it the right way every single time. That's where champions are made. Not just, I've got big wins. I got a couple big wins. Don't look at what we lost to.
Yeah, Alabama had great wins, but the problem is that they had bad losses.
Yes.
That's the issue that we continue to talk about. How it's, yes, we acknowledge Alabama, you beat some really good teams last year.
Yes.
But you also lost to Vanderbilt. You lost to Oklahoma. We are reasonable people. If you went 9-3 and your 3 losses were Georgia, Texas, and Oregon all on the road by 1 score, you know what it'd be saying? That's a college football playoff team.
Yeah.
I don't care that they're 9-3. Go look at who they had to play. Go look at their losses. Go look at some of their wins. That is definitely a top 12 team in the country. They should get in over SMU or whatever. They should get in. I'm sorry, SMU. You just don't have that on your resume. You didn't get that opportunity. It's not always about getting sucked into the record. It's what you did within that record. Obviously, there's within reason. You're not going to ever argue an 8-4 or a 7-5 team. But once you get to 9-3, you start getting on borderline of being worthy of college football playoff. The issue is that you lost to Vanderbilt and you lost to Oklahoma. How are you going to sit here and tell me that you would definitely have been so much better than SMU in the college football playoff? I don't know if you would have. Which team was going to show up that day?
The one that beat Georgia? The one that beat Georgia, or the one that put up 3 points against Oklahoma? Which team is going to show up?
I don't know. Guess what? If it's the one that beat Georgia, then that team could maybe win the national championship. Maybe. Yeah.
Maybe.
But what if it's the team that lost to Oklahoma? Well, congratulations. You would have done the same thing that SMU did.
Yeah.
You would have gotten your butt whooped in round one. We all would have been saying, how come we took Alabama? How come we took a 9-win SEC team? But I think we're good on this conversation, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm
Okay.
always good to talk about those whiners in the SEC and how nobody wants me to serve more than the special good boys.
Yeah, you get all the playoff teams, you get all the glory, you get favored in March Madness, and you're still complaining. It doesn't make any sense. But regardless, we'll move on from that. And coming up, we'll talk about rivalries in college sports, especially how they're affected when a player transfers within the same conference from rival schools. That's coming up next on Locked On ACC. This is Locked On ACC. I'm Jackson Holzer, the host of Locked On Syracuse. Of course, we're always joined by Kenton Gibbs, one of the hosts of Locked On Wolfpack and former NC State defensive tackle. Kenton, NC State has been in the news lately, specifically their basketball program. And since we're talking basketball here, hold on. Got to switch my background.
He's going to switch the background.
There we go.
The background switches.
We're not talking about Syracuse. Don't worry. Syracuse basketball is still not very good, although we'll see what happens next year with Kyan Anthony and Sadiq White. But hey, NC State basketball with Will Wade, they're looking pretty good right now. They got another transfer portal addition, Ven Allen Lubin from North Carolina. Ooh, going from North Carolina to NC State. He's definitely not the first player to transfer within the same conference. So obviously NC State and UNC are a rivalry. So I'm going to defer to you here. How do you think this impacts that rivalry specifically? And then can you speak more about how this affects rivalries in general when a player transfers within the same conference to a rival school?
It makes them better. It makes them better the same way that Brett Favre going and playing for the Vikings did for the Vikings and Packers rivalry. It does the same thing in essence. I want to explain something to people here. The righteous indignation that I've seen from, he's a traitor and we hate him and all that. I love that because that's what makes rivalries great. That's what makes college rivalries really amazing. The fact that, like, I don't like you. I don't like you guys. I hate everything about you guys. This is I cannot stand you. You are scrupulous people that, this is you are who you are for a reason. That's what makes college sports great. That's what makes these rivalries great. And I've seen some people saying, but for example, there was a gentleman in Grayson and I's comments saying, you all are happy to take a Tar Heel, and that's just, your fan base should be embarrassed of you. It was a Tar Heel fan that said that. And I said, that's very interesting. Did you feel the same way about Jakeem Harris coming to be your starting safety? Jakeem Harris was a starting safety at NC State for years, tore his ACL, and then after he tore his ACL, you know how people say you can't lose your spot to injury? That's a lie. It's a lie. If you pay attention to sports, it's very clearly a lie.
Wally Pipp.
Exactly. He got Wally Pippen in essence, but it wasn't quite Wally Pippen because, the theory is Wally Pippen had a little bit too much to drink that night. But either way you cut or slice it, he ends up at North Carolina. There wasn't the same, I can't believe that there would be people even excited over here that we would take such a player. At the end of the day, these players are making what the best decision is for them for whatever reasons. We can talk about, with the NIL and transfer portal, it's not just transferring, they're all transferring for money. We can have that conversation. But at the end of the day, there are plenty of times in life where we have left jobs, maybe for the same pay or not much of a pay raise, but it was a better environment, better situation, more in line with what we wanted to do in our future, all that type of stuff. There are a myriad of reasons that things like this happen. And I think that it's best for the sport when you hate the guy, you criticize him, you talk about how you never liked him, his jump shot form is ugly, his headband is stupid, yada, 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 so on and so forth. It's great when we acknowledge that. I think it's kind of lame when it's like, hey, how could y'all even take a guy that you said all these things about? It's sports. Fan is short for fanatic. Somebody's being fanatical about players when they're talking about either their team or their rival. That's how this game goes. So let's not make a mountain out of a molehill here.
I pretty much agree with you 100%, which is kind of an issue. We never really agree. We never really agree. You know, the way I thought about it is, I know I'm really young and I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine if Christian Laettner could play for North Carolina.
Mm.
How crazy would that be?
Yeesh.
Like, obviously, I'm not sitting here saying Ven Allen Lubin is like Christian Laettner or everything like that, or like even with all due respect, UNC NC State is not UNC and Duke in terms of rivalry in college basketball. It's not the same thing at all. But it's just, it makes them more intriguing and better. In fact, I think it's much better with the portal than it was kind of pre-portal, and there was this period of one and done. So yeah, you would have the players going to the school and they wouldn't leave to go to another school, but then they would just leave after 1 year to go to the NBA.
Right.
At least now they can transfer, stay in college, and I think it makes it more intriguing that they can transfer within the conference and go to a rival school. And I know it's kind of hard for people to kind of fathom, but, you know, I'm sure there's some Syracuse fans who might be watching or listening to this podcast. Okay, go imagine if Patrick Ewing from Georgetown can go play for Syracuse.
Hey, now.
Or that Pearl Washington makes a stunning move and goes to Georgetown. Like, this is the stuff that could have happened had this system been in place. And I know it sounds nuts and that's crazy and that we would never have liked it then. I think it makes them so much more intriguing. I absolutely love what this does to rivalry, because you go from hating a player at one school to now you love this guy. Mm-hmm. Now you're like, yeah, Ven Allen Lubin, we love him. Go NC State, right? Absolutely. And it makes the North Carolina fans pissed off. And then vice versa. When it happens to your school, you're like, I hate this. This sucks. Everything like that. That's what ultimately rivalries are about.
Absolutely.
So I love it. And I think the system has its flaws. I don't think it's perfect, but I love when a player can go from a school like North Carolina and go to NC State. If I remember correctly, Ven Allen Lubin was the one who entered the portal and then said he was like entering the portal just to return to North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
That's I think people are annoyed about with North Carolina, because
not only that, this is his fourth school in 4 years. I understand the critiques of it. Trust me, I'm Notre Dame, Vanderbilt, UNC, now NC State. I understand the critiques. I understand that there are problems. There's other things that, you know, you can get upset about. You can talk about all that good stuff. To me, the energy behind, oh, he transferred to a rival. How could he? And how could you accept him? Come on, man. Come on. If you work for Meta and you know, X is offering you more money, Twitter is offering you more money to jump over there, you're jumping. You're not going to say, no, those are our rivals. And what do you mean ByteDance wants me to come over there? I'm not working for TikTok. You would look at yourself like an idiot. And rightfully so. And those companies are rivals. But you understand, as an adult, making the best decision for me and my family. This is what works for me and my family in this moment to succeed. And that's where we're going. At the end of the day, that's what these young men are deciding, even if it is their rival.
You know, Kenton, how we spent the first 25 minutes ripping Paul Feinbaum?
Yeah.
If he wanted to work for ACC Network, I would take him.
Listen, I always said.
I would take him. I would sit here and say, be an apologist for us.
Let me tell you something.
We need an apologist.
Let me tell you something. If Paul Feinbaum,
we need a propaganda guy.
If Paul Feinbaum were actually the commissioner of the ACC and the Big 12, there's no way in hell he'd roll over. He'd be fighting claw and tooth and nail to get the best for the ACC and the Big 12. You know why? Paul Feinbaum's good at his job. He's good at his job. He's a propagandist that does a great job of spinning, does a great job of pushing the propaganda. He does a great job. I wouldn't expect him to stop it with the ACC.
So, yeah, if he wanted to work for the ACC in any capacity, I mean, I don't think the ACC would say no. I think they would be foolish to say no just because he comes from a rival conference. Who cares?
Exactly. Give me a mouthpiece.
He makes us better. Ven Allen Lubin makes NC State better. Of course, they're going to accept him. What is this, a plant? You think maybe it is a plant? Maybe this is North Carolina's plant. It's a plant.
That's interesting.
He's in a tank.
That's so
kind of
interesting.
Like what Louisville had with Brandon Huntley Hatfield. He's in a tank. That's the plan all along.
You playing some 3D chess. You're doing the knowledge. You're doing the knowledge, Jackson Holder.
That's what we do here on Locked On ACC. We do the knowledge. Kenton, anything else you want to add to this conversation here?
No, I think we left it at a great place. But I will say one more thing, actually. Now that you presented that, I will take the time to say one more thing. I want fans, listeners, viewers, everybody, take a second and think about who's allowed to change scenery and who's not, and why you have that perception. Let's just take a second to think about that. That's a much broader conversation that we don't have the time. We could do a million shows on that, but I just want you to put that little seed in your brain of why are coaches allowed to move freely and there's no problem, but players, it's a much different situation. Just take it with a grain of salt and think about it.
All right. Well, we talked about it off air a little bit, but basically the perception is that players, for whatever reason or for one reason or another, fans expect loyalty out of players, but they're more loyal to the team. So they want the team to make the best decision for the team generally, but they expect that the players are going to also do what's best for the team that they cheer for.
Yeah.
That's just how it generally is in society. That's how we think. I'll tell you right now how I think. I root for my teams, and I don't expect loyalty from the players. I expect the players to, when they are with my team, to give it 110%. They're going to give it their all. And when an opportunity presents itself to potentially move, they have to do what's best for themselves. I don't hold. If they want to go for one reason or another, they can go. There's the door. If they want to stay, well, I hope that my team can figure it out. Or if my team says, you know what, we don't want you back, that's that. Like I'm generally just like, you know what, everyone has their own decisions to make. I don't really go one way or another. That's why people, especially with Syracuse and when Trevor Pena left, I was basically a Trevor Pena apologist because I didn't care that he left. I cared that it hurt my football team because it made them worse. But as far as him personally, he made a decision. Like that's that. I'm not going to sit here and call him out for it. But that's a good conversation to leave with all our viewers and all our listeners. And folks, what are your thoughts? Comment in the comment section below. Rivalries in college sports, what the ACC should do when the college football playoff expands. And of course, if you disagree with us in the comment section below, please feel free. Tell us why you believe that myself and Kenton Gibbs were idiots. We have no idea what we're talking about. Feel free. Just comment in the comment section below. You guys are idiots, and tell us why. We'd love to hear from you in the comments section below. And thank you for making Locked On ACC your first listen today. And for your second listen, you can check out the Locked On Portal Show with football recruiting expert Brian Smith, who's got the latest rumors and signings each and every day. You can be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. Find the Portal Podcast on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And folks, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening, and we'll see you all again soon.